my name is Rebecca Gilbert, and I'm an environmental science major at AUM. Today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the issues associated with plastic in the ocean. And this may or may not be an issue that you've heard about before, as it has been widely publicized over the past decade. A lot of people have made a lot of switches as far as switching away from plastic bags at the grocery store and starting to snip their soda can rings, which is all awesome and all makes a difference. Unfortunately, however, the problem hasn't gotten that much better. There's still a lot of plastic going into the ocean every year. A big part of this is probably because we see plastic in the ocean as something that doesn't directly affect us. However, that's not really true, and plastic in the ocean is just as dangerous to marine animals as it is to humans. So, I want to start you guys off with a number, and that number is 8 million tons, which, if you think about it, is a really big number. And according to Charles Moore and Cassandra Phillips from the book Plastic in the Ocean, written in 2012, it is the amount of plastic that goes into the ocean every single year, which is kind of crazy because plastic doesn't really weigh much. So if you think about, like a plastic fork that you get from Taco Bell and try to picture 8 million tons of that, it's a lot of plastic. But the scary part of it isn't even necessarily how much plastic goes into the ocean, but what happens to it once it gets there. And the reason for that is that fish evolved in a world where everything was food, and they could eat pretty much everything that they saw. So when they see plastic, they eat it. And you might still be thinking, well, why do I care about that? How does it affect me? Well, according to How Plastic in the Ocean is Contaminating Your Seafood, published in NPR in 2013, plastic absorbs toxins. So it's made of petroleum, and it has chemical properties that let it absorb pretty much all of the toxic stuff around it. So PCBs, DDT, industrial chemicals, heavy metal, all of this stuff that we've been dumping into the ocean for the past decade, it absorbs it all. So when fish eat plastic, they aren't just eating plastic, they're also eating all of this other stuff that it's been soaking in. And unfortunately for us, according to Microplastics and the Threat to Our Seafood, published in the Ocean Health Index in 2013, these toxins are absorbed into the fish's flesh, and they accumulate up the food chain. So that means that small fish eat plastic and they become a little bit toxic, but big fish eat a lot of these toxic little fish and they become really toxic. And they also happen to be the fish that most people eat. We prefer the fish at the top of the food chain. And so when we eat fish, we eat a lot of the toxins too. So we know this is a problem because Arctic people who live really far away from modern chemicals have the highest levels of them in their body. In The Empire of Ice: Encounters in a Changing Landscape, written by Gretel Ehrlich in 2010, she talks about how Arctic people have been eating lots of fish at the top of the food chain, and they're starting to have a lot of issues with birth defects, cancers, and other health problems. And even though most of us don't eat as much fish as Arctic people, it's still going to cause us problems. So what can we do about it? Well, unfortunately, a lot of the plastic comes from industry, so you and I can't do much about it at all. But over the past decade, more and more consumer items have been washing into the ocean as well. And so what we can do is reduce our plastic usage by switching from plastic bottles to reusable bottles, or switching from plastic bags at the grocery store to bringing our own. We can also stop littering, because believe it or not, almost everything that you throw outside gets washed into the sewers, out to rivers, and then eventually out into the oceans where it causes problems. So this is a problem, and it's not one we're going to fix today, but it needs to be something that's on our radar. Plastic absorbs toxins that are then eaten by fish, that are then eaten by humans. And ultimately, by reducing our plastic consumption and reducing our littering, it will have an impact, and it will help to save both human and marine lives. Thank you.